Hey there, Hang Up listeners. Before we start the show, I want to let you know about a story coming up a little later. It's from one of our partners, SAP. Is your business reaching an exciting turning point? Are you ready to seize the moment for growth? When you're facing uncertainty, SAP can help you be ready for anything that happens next. To learn more, head to sap.com/be ready and stick around to hear how a nationwide bakery seized the moment.
This episode is brought to you by Google Pixel, the official fan phone of the NBA and WNBA. The new Pixel 8 and Pixel 8 Pro are built different. How? Take the Audio Magic Eraser tool that helps block out distracting crowd noise so your play-by-play commentary sounds crystal clear. The only phone engineered by Google brings out the audio you care about so your videos sound as crisp as they look. Learn more at googlestore.com/pixelnba. Audio Magic Eraser requires Google Photos app. May not work on all audio elements.
The following podcast contains explicit language. Hide your children. Hi, I'm Josh Levin, and this is Hang Up and Listen for the week of November 27th, 2023. On this week's show, we'll talk about college football's rivalry week, where pesky Michigan took down Ohio State again, and Alabama maybe got lucky against Auburn. We'll also discuss the noise coming out of Baton Rouge, where LSU women's basketball star Angel Reese isn't playing, and coach Kim Mulkey isn't saying why. And finally, the Wall Street Journal's Jonathan Clegg will be here to explain the huge penalty the Premier League slapped onto Everton and whether mega clubs Manchester City and Chelsea will get punished next. I'm in Washington, D.C., and I'm the author of The Queen and the host of the podcast 1 Year. Our new season on 1990 is out now, so please subscribe and tune in to our premiere episode about Pizza Hut and the fall of the Soviet Union.
You know, I'm a big Josh fan. I hope everybody knows this.
Wow.
And I'm not saying this just because Josh is a friend, one of the best colleagues you could have. It really is like a fantastic episode. It's really surprising. And, it's funny because randomly I'd been thinking about Mikhail Gorbachev.
I thought you were going to say randomly I was thinking about Pizza Hut, but no. You surprised me.
No, unfortunately, no. I mean, I haven't thought about Pizza Hut in quite a while, actually. But the Mikhail Gorbachev commercial for Pizza Hut, it's something to behold. Like, even if, listening to it is one thing, also watching it. I encourage you, after you listen to Josh's episode, to go find that thing on YouTube, because it's actually kind of amazing.
I'll just say that the reason I listened to 1 Year is to pick up those historical facts that the press missed at the time, like the fact that Pizza Hut was responsible for the collapse of the Soviet Union.
You were a reporter at the time. How did you miss that?
I know. Just not good enough.
Better luck next time. Also here with me in spirit in D.C. is Stefan Fatsis. He is the author of the books Word Freak, Few Seconds of Panic, and Wild and Outside. Hello, Stefan.
Hi, Josh. Hope you had a lovely Thanksgiving.
And to you and yours. Joel Anderson has already piped up. Last week, Joel, you published a piece on Slate with the headline, "The horrible lawsuit against Sean Combs took many people by surprise." Not me. A little braggy, but that's okay.
Hey, we don't write the headlines, right, Joel?
We
don't write the headlines.
I don't write the headlines. It doesn't mean that it's not accurate, but I didn't write it.
I didn't write that accurate headline. No, the piece is great. It's a bracing reminder of everything Puffy has been accused of in his long career in the public eye, including an allegation relevant to your, past reporting that he'd offered to pay $1 million for someone to kill Tupac and Suge Knight.
Yeah, man, it's kind of crazy. If you had told me 25 years ago that I'd be writing about Sean Diddy Combs and his role in Tupac's murder, I wouldn't have believed it. But, man, you made things so unfun, Josh, by bringing this up. Now I got to be serious.
All right.
Reporter guy.
Let me just say that, just for people who don't know, Mason Cameron's show isn't just for breaking NBA rumors anymore.
No. I got to say, that's one of the most fun that's some of the most fun I've ever had, tracking down a YouTube clip for a story. I got to be honest. But yeah, man, Diddy's done a lot of stuff over the years, and it's worth looking at again in retrospect and seeing the people and the lives he's affected along the way. It's not all been good stuff. It's not all been fun, right? Yeah, man, I got an opportunity to write about that. Also, I just have to say, because you took me in a totally different direction, Josh, I literally forgot that Thanksgiving was Thursday. Like, until you brought it up, it seemed like it was forever ago. So thank you for reminding me. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving.
All right, before we get to our first segment, I just want to say a few kind words. I guess it can be up to you how kind you think they are, about our Slate Plus members who have supported us, have allowed us to make this show, and who, I think, get a nice little deal in return with our weekly bonus segments. This week, we're going to continue our conversation about college football and really focus in on Michigan interim coach Sharon Moore. The offensive coordinator led them to a win over Ohio State. What should he do next? Should he stick around? Should teams be falling all over themselves to hire him? It's a really fascinating moment for him and in the college football hiring cycle, and we will get into it. You'll get a bonus segment on Hang Up and Listen every week if you're a Slate Plus member. You get it on other shows too, the bonus segments, and you get ad-free listening for all Slate podcasts, and you get to support us. Slate.com/hangupplus. That's slate.com/hangupplus to sign up. For the last month, the Michigan football program has been besieged by reports that a staffer ran a comprehensive sign stealing operation involving teams of people, videotaping opponents' sidelines, secret payments, all sorts of other sinister-seeming skullduggery that you've heard about if you listen to this show. The Wolverines head coach Jim Harbaugh paid the price for those allegations, or at least paid a price, getting suspended by the Big Ten Conference for 3 regular season games, including Michigan's annual showdown with Ohio State. It's hard to overstate how much was on the line in Ann Arbor on Saturday, with Harbaugh not in attendance, but with both the Wolverines and the Buckeyes undefeated. For all the drama and the agita off the field and the stakes on it, the outcome was exactly the same as it was in 2021 and 2022, with the Wolverines ripping the heart out of their hated rivals. The final score, Michigan 30, Ohio State 24. Here is Ohio State coach Ryan Day after the game.
We know that what this game means to so many people, and so to come up short is certainly crushing, not only just because you invest your whole year in it. We know at Ohio State what this game means. And so, there's a locker room in there that's devastated.
If you're wearing headphones, you might have heard in the background the whoops of celebration from Michigan as Ryan Day was being crushed and sounding crushed. Joel, Ohio State was driving for what could have been the winning score. This was a competitive game. It came down to a handful of plays, as opposed to Ohio State's previous 2 losses in this series, which were comprehensive beatdowns. But I've got to think that this one, maybe because of that close score, was even more devastating. What do you think?
Before I get started, I just want to take a step back for a second and just appreciate what we got to witness on Saturday. Like the stakes of this game, the intensity, the pageantry of, almost 115,000 people crammed into one old stadium to watch this game. And it just brings to mind all the things that you've seen in this rivalry over the years. David Boston backpedaling on Charles Woodson, Tim Biakabatuka running for 300 plus yards. And I have to say, the reason the Tim Biakabatuka thing stands out to me is that when I was a freshman in college, we had to watch cut-ups of Tim Biakabatuka running this play called 34 Belly over and over again. So that game is just like seared under my brain. But you just get so much of a feeling of like the agony of being on the wrong side of it just by watching it on TV, right? Like what it's like to be John Cooper or Rich Rodriguez or Jim Harbaugh or now Ryan Day. And
so empathetic of you.
Really?
Yeah. Like you usually just, people forget that, the trolling Joel Anderson, the guy who revels in other fan bases' defeats, that you have this kind of soft side of you, that you're thinking of Ohio State on this difficult day for them.
It really took me back to like all the times in my life I've been watching that game, as a football fan. Like I don't know how you can like look at that and not just appreciate what we're all in this for. But now I'll start hating a little bit. So there's this video of Ohio State gathered on the field before the game. It's a little bit before kickoff, and Yahoo Sports posted on their account with a caption, "The Buckeyes were getting all caps loose before the game." Okay. And it's like this one receiver doing something goofy, another guy doing something, and they look so tight. Like you actually see Marvin Harrison at the end of the circle, and he's doing nothing. Like, he's just standing there, and I'm like, they don't look loose at all. Like, they look terrified. And I actually think it was reflected in their start to the game. Like, Ohio State and Michigan, very evenly matched teams. Like, I don't think anybody trying to make a referendum on these two programs out of this game is an idiot, because the game was very close. What I think the difference is that Ohio State came out very slow. They looked a little nervous. Kyle McCord throws that interception deep in his own territory. He throws behind Marvin Harrison, and Marvin Harrison doesn't fight over Will Johnson to complete the route, and there's an interception, and Michigan scores 4 plays later. They're ahead. They never trail the rest of the game. And I think that because of that, because Ohio State played so jittery early on, and because they were trailing, they were running uphill all game long, and they just were never able to catch up. So I think that that's as much anything. So, Stefan, I know that there's time to talk about Ryan Day and what his future is there and what the expectations of them are. But I just don't know how anybody can look at that game and say, oh, Ohio State is fatally flawed in some sort of way, and they'll never be able to catch up with Michigan or Jim Harbaugh.
Which is why, again, getting probably a little bit too far ahead of ourselves, it seems a little bit preposterous to say, oh, Ohio State isn't as good as the other 3 teams that are going to make the playoff. And Ohio State sort of, I guess, maybe in some world could make the playoff. But yeah, the beginning of that game, I mean, look, Joel, you've played in front of lots of people. That is an intimidating atmosphere. There's 106 or 8 or 10,000 people in that stadium. It is energetic. It is fun if you are on the home team. And it has to make you feel a little bit nervous, especially given the way Ohio State got blown out the last 2 games in Columbus and in Ann Arbor the year before that. And it kind of showed at the beginning of the game. You mentioned the interception, but you also had what appeared to be really tentative play calling by Ryan Day, not going for it on 4th and 1 on Ohio State's second drive around midfield, letting the clock run down late in the first half and trying a 52-yard field goal when they had 30 seconds to go for it on 4th and 2 at Michigan's 34, and maybe go in front with a touchdown. The field goal was not converted. So I don't know how these things work, what Ryan Day is thinking on the sidelines. He defended the decision not to go for it on 4th and 2, but it did feel like Ohio State was tentative early on, and we're fortunate to only be down 14-10 at the half, because that was an even game otherwise.
If you look back at the recent history of this rivalry, it obviously wasn't long ago that Michigan was losing every time out against Ohio State and remade their program to counteract that and to try to beat this one team, not only their big rival, but the team that was standing in their way from making it to the Big Ten title game, from making it to the playoff. And it worked. They pounded Ohio State into submission more in 21 and 22 than in 23. But, even with knowing all of that and remembering all of that, it still seems kind of like loser talk to me for Ohio State, in turn, Joel, to just really be buying into this. Oh, we have to prove to everyone how tough we are. Who cares what Lou Holtz, literal Lou Holtz, who's 128 years old, is telling you you're not tough enough. And it's gotten into their heads. And they, look, it's great to have a good defense. It was smart of them to invest in that side of the ball and not have to rely on their offense every game. But seeing them be conservative, not pursue a higher variance strategy that you might pursue if you're an underdog, and just want to pound the ball and kind of out Michigan, it just seems like just be comfortable with who you are, do you, and beat them like you always used to beat them. It just seems like they've gotten inside their own heads and Michigan has gotten inside their own head. All of that's to say they're just not that far behind, and they never were.
Right. I mean, it's just a fallacy. I mean, they were 11-0 coming into the team, to the game. They're tough enough. Here's the thing. You have Marvin Harrison Jr., you have Travion Henderson. They don't. So who gives a fuck how tough you are? You can open it up and embarrass them on the edges. I thought that Ohio State looked like the more athletic and more explosive team. And I don't know if the reason that they couldn't exploit that is that, maybe they were scared of Kyle McCord because he played so tentatively early and thrown that interception. Maybe they got scared off that way or whatever. I don't know what they didn't see, but you got to think. I mean, I got to get more out of Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka and Cade Stover and Travion Henderson than what they got. And that, to me, that's the failing. You're right. Like, if they got suckered into we got to get into a street fight with these guys, then that's dumb. But I mean, there is something that's sort of lost to that. Like, they were as tough as Michigan. Like, there was that drive.
They ran the ball incredibly effectively in the second half, Joel.
They outgained Michigan, offensively in this game. Like, they had the best offensive performance against Michigan anybody's had this year. If Ohio State fans are tripping over that, then they're tripping over the wrong thing.
It was really an even game, and maybe, Ohio State fans realize that. I kind of doubt it. I think that the fact that Ryan Day is now 1-3 against Michigan is going to really loom large all offseason, and they've built this game into being they haven't built it. Like, the entire history of the rivalry has built this game into being the kind of defining thing to decide if the season is a success or not. And I would argue that if they were to stand pat, that there's a better chance that they'll win a national title next year than Michigan does. Obviously, I think this is Michigan's year. They've got the veteran quarterback. They've got the veteran skill position guys. They've got the veterans on defense. They, have, I think, everything that they need. And also, even though there are a bunch of undefeated teams, it seems like a historically weak crop of contenders. Like, this is not the Georgia team of the previous 2 years. This is not a vintage Alabama team.
All right, Josh. I mean, Michigan want to try that tough guy shit with Georgia. Let's see. You know what I'm saying?
No, Georgia.
They want to slug it out with Georgia. Let's see.
I'm not saying that they're going to kill Georgia, but I'm saying they have a better chance against this Georgia than against the Stetson Bennett Georgia. I would argue, but maybe not. Anyway, I think that this is Michigan's year. Is my point. I don't think next year is Michigan's year, breaking in a new quarterback, et cetera, and so forth. Right. And so I guess the question is, Stefan, does Ohio State have the fortitude, the self-belief to say, if we actually just keep doing what we're doing, we're going to be fine? 12 team, and also there's a 12-team playoff. There will never be a Michigan-Ohio State game like this again. There will never be any rivalry game like this again.
That is the last game of the season for one of these two teams. Right. That's exactly right.
Or that if you, like, Ohio State made the playoff last year, and losing this game. And it's kind of an anomaly that there are so many teams that are undefeated this year. Like, historically, that I think in most years, Ohio State would actually be in a 4-team playoff, and they still might be. But next year, Stefan, if they are undefeated and lose this game, they'll be probably have a home game in the 12-team playoff.
Yeah. There are still things to consider here, right? Like, what if? I mean, I don't think Michigan's going to lose to Iowa, right? But Georgia, Alabama, Florida State, Washington, they could all lose, I think. It's certainly possible and more likely than Michigan losing to Iowa in the Big Ten championship game. So do Ohio State and Alabama and Oregon have, are they spending this week thinking, no, we're going to make the playoff. We just got to win this game?
For sure. I mean, if Oregon wins over Washington, I think they're in and would be in a better position than Ohio State is. I think, Michigan and Georgia, obviously, if they win, they're in. And then you have the whole Texas, Alabama scenario if they both end up with one loss and are going up against each other. I just think, Ohio State's win over Notre Dame doesn't kind of play like it did last year. And it just feels like, even though it's supposed to be just considering this season, Joel, I just feel like the narrative of them losing 3 times in a row to Michigan, it seems like a harder argument to make this season than maybe it was last season.
Well, there's also going to be just recency bias. They lost, Alabama won, Oregon won, Texas won. They're going to have the psychological advantage when the suits decide who gets to be in the playoff.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of the wrong note for Ohio State to have lost on. I mean, the narrative is what it is, but I mean, we can't pretend like Ohio State or Michigan had tough schedules this year. So it has to be like, if you lose the one game that you play against somebody that can punch back, it should be determinative, right? Under this system, that maybe the loser shouldn't get another chance at it with all these other pretty decent teams waiting in line. So, you hate that, because I like Ohio State. I like watching them play. Like, I want to see Marvin Harrison. I want to see Travion Henderson, but it's just not their year. And yeah, maybe next year.
We haven't actually even talked about Jim Harbaugh. He's back for the Big Ten title game. He said that watching that game was one of the happiest moments of his life. So I'm glad.
You didn't have to work.
I'm glad.
Good for him.
I'm glad he's enjoying himself.
So much for cheaters never prosper. You know?
Let's say a quick word about the Iron Bowl. I don't even know, Joel. I don't even know. I mean, for one thing, you were talking in the beginning about these are the reasons why we watch these games. There are these games that develop shorthand, and 4th and 31, I think, is going to be something that flashes to mind. Like, Auburn's up by 4, they rush 3, but one guy is just kind of standing there.
A spy.
Like a spy. Thinking that Jalen Milroe is just going to run unimpeded 31 yards into the end zone. Yeah. Just like mathematically, it seems almost impossible to drop that many guys into coverage and still leave a guy one-on-one. But to their credit, Jalen Milroe throws the pass. Isaiah Bond comes up and catches it, and
doesn't come up and catch it, Josh. He comes up, facing the ball back to the end zone with about a foot to spare, and gets
that foot down, and gets the foot down too. Like, it's.
I think we're kind of like immune to how good wide receivers are, but that is a good point.
Yes,
yeah.
I feel like 15, 20 years ago, that would have been like one of the 3 or 5 best catches of the year, and I feel like I see catches like that over and over again on Saturdays now. The one thing that I would want to say, though, about this is that, I mean, there's no reason that game should have been close. Like, we talk about the rivalry piece of this. Like, Auburn had just come off a 3-touchdown loss to New Mexico State. Like, just hearing that, if you follow college football, you should just know how absurd it is that New Mexico State beat Auburn by 3 touchdowns. The next week, they're about to knock off Alabama on their home field, and then Jalen Milroe throws that pass. And I mean, I don't know about you all, but when Isaiah Bond comes down with that ball, I screamed in a way that like upset everybody in my house. Like, the throw was on a rope, the catch, like all of it. I mean, I'm trying to think. I mean, it's not a Hail Mary, but like, when have you seen a throw like that to win a game like that? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that, I guess I saw the Michael Westbrook, Cordell Stewart throw. I mean, we've seen.
There was the Tua throw to Devontae Smith in the national title game. I mean, that was a different kind of play, but
yeah, I was there for that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it was absurd. And I just want to say, shout out Jalen Milroe, H-Town. You know what I'm saying? That's an H-Town kid right there. And,
it's about time in Alabama. Alabama got a break. That's what I say.
I mean, that kid got benched early in the year. You look at the raw tools, the ability to make that throw under those circumstances. It's just unbelievable, man. And again, that's why we watch college football, man. Like, this is what it's all for that kind of shit right there.
Quote of the week, Auburn coach Hugh Freeze asked about the decision to not rush Milroe very much. You can second guess it. Yes, you can second guess it.
We'll talk a little bit more about the coaching carousel coming up in our bonus segment. But up next, LSU, Kim Mulkey, Angel Reese. What in the hell is going on? This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Let's face it, sometimes multitasking can be overwhelming. Like when your favorite podcast is playing and the person next to you is talking and your car fan is blasting, all while you're trying to find the perfect parking spot. But then again, sometimes multitasking is easy, like quoting with Progressive Insurance. They do the hard work of comparing rates so you can find a great rate that works for you, even if it's not with them. Give their nifty comparison tool a try, and you might just find getting the rate and coverage you deserve is easy. All you need to do is visit Progressive's website to get a quote with all the coverages you want, like comprehensive and collision coverage or personal injury protection. Then you'll see Progressive's direct rate, and their tool will provide options from other companies all lined up and ready to compare. So it's simple to choose the rate and coverages you like. Press play on comparing auto rates. Quote Progressive.com to join the more than 28 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Comparison rates not available in all states or situations. Prices vary based on how you buy.
This podcast is brought to you by Slate Studios and SAP. How do you know when to seize the moment for growth? When your opportunity arrives, you need to be ready. From expanding into new markets to hiring, business leaders face so many tough decisions.
My name is Ray Fager. I'm Chief Data and Analytics Officer at Kings Hawaiian, as well as Interim CIO. Kings Hawaiian is a family-owned company that began in Hilo, Hawaii in 1950. We make amazing sweet Hawaiian bread, primarily dinner rolls and hamburger buns. Our customers love us, but we're always worried about consistently making the same thing everywhere.
Not long ago, Kings Hawaiian began to grow. They needed to build a plant for a new product.
We have a secret formula. No one knows exactly what goes into our bread except for about 5 people in the entire world. We can't use a co-manufacturer. And because of that, we realized that the software we're using to currently manage our production facilities needed to be upgraded.
And with SAP technology, they knew they were ready.
The cloud technology is the thing that will allow us to control all the manufacturing processes from one place, analyze the dough we're making, and get a super awesome product out the door to the consumer. And it'll be exactly the same no matter where you buy it. We get help from AI with making sure the right people can view the right data sets and the wrong people cannot view certain data sets. That's really important in governing.
Kings Hawaiian seized the moment for growth. Will you? Head to sap.com/be ready to learn more.
NCAA women's basketball defending champion LSU will host Virginia Tech on Thursday night as part of the ESPN's annual SEC-ACC Challenge. Tip-off is at 8 p.m. Central from the Maravich Center, the start of a game that will likely be the main event of the 14-game showcase between the two conferences. It's the only one featuring a pair of top 10 teams. But there's a lot more intrigue to the matchup than whether LSU can win its 8th straight game. And it primarily centers around LSU star Angel Reese, who was benched in the second half of LSU's 4th game on November 14th and hasn't suited up for the Tigers since, missing a total of 4 games. Reese didn't even accompany the team to the Cayman Islands for a tournament last week. LSU coach Kim Mulkey has declined to give a timetable for Reese's return. But last week, Mulkey seemingly hinted at some turmoil behind the scenes.
Has Angel been practicing like up to this point?
Angel, were you at the press conference the other day?
Yeah.
Angel, I'm going to give you the same answer I gave you.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
Oh, all right. I got you. Is she going to, have you decided if she's going to the Cayman Islands yet?
If I have, I wouldn't tell you.
Okay.
You're not entitled to that information. Okay? So I'll say it again. Angel was not in uniform tonight. Angel is a part of this basketball team, and Angel will be back sooner than later.
Angel Reese is still on the team. So we've got that. But Josh, if Kim Mulkey has anything to do with it, none of us are ever going to know what's really going on behind closed doors at LSU for now. And we can try to read the tweets and the tea leaves and all of that. But at the very least, it seems like Reese is at odds with more than Coach Mulkey in the LSU locker room. So what do you make of what's going on in Baton Rouge right now?
Well, it's tradition that we know why players are suspended based on interpreting Twitter battles between the players' mothers, like Flau'jae Johnson's mom saying that Reese has a GPA under 2.0, I believe was what was alleged. I think so much of what is going on here is being refracted through everyone's feelings about Kim Mulkey, and from Kim Mulkey's tone of voice, from Kim Mulkey, the way that she's handled press inquiries about this, the way that she's acted like it's somehow strange that people want to know why Angel Reese, the biggest star in women's basketball, isn't playing this game, that it's like somehow rude for people to even ask her, to have the temerity to wonder why this kind of icon is not appearing on the court. Because it's actually normal for players, college players, not to play in games. And it's also kind of normal for coaches not to explain it. I mean, look a few yards away in the LSU football facility, asked why cornerbacks Deuce Chestnut and Denver Harris weren't playing and whether they're going to be active again. Brian Kelly said, internal things need to be accomplished that I really can't discuss. Seems kind of similar to what Kim Mulkey said, but he said it in a nice tone of voice. They're also not like huge star players, although having them might have helped LSU against Alabama. But, Stefan, I would argue it's not what Kim Mulkey is saying, but it's how she's saying it.
Yeah, though a 4-game absence is a long time. And this is the defending national champion and one of the most prominent coaches in the history of women's college basketball and a future potential top draft pick in the WNBA. Maybe no one is entitled to information, but it's certainly not how I think a program would normally operate.
What if it was Dawn Staley and she said, I understand why you want to know. It would violate her privacy. Yeah. It would violate the privacy of the team.
Right.
I understand, but unfortunately, I can't tell you anything. And when there is information to share, I'll share it. Thank you so much for your interest.
That's fine. That would be fine. But that's not what Kim Mulkey has done. Kim Mulkey is blaming reporters and making it seem like everyone else is crazy for asking and been hostile and confrontational when asked about why this mega star athlete who was probably the most prominent women's basketball player during and after their run to the national championship last year has suddenly vanished from the team. Not because she got injured. She was benched for the second half of that game and hasn't played since. Does this serve Angel Reese? I don't know. It sure seems like Kim Mulkey is kind of allowing speculation to go crazy here. Emma Baccellieri, I thought, had a good piece in Sports Illustrated that made that point. That, as she writes, that approach has only drawn more eyes to the situation, and it doesn't seem like it has protected Reese.
Right. And I guess, you'd like to think that Kim Mulkey could handle this better, but I don't know that any of us would ever expect that, because I do think that she has sort of a fundamental
problem.
Yeah, like a fundamental distaste for the media in any way, right? That this is not something that she wants to deal with. And she's been fortunate enough for a lot of her career to work in places where there's not like a robust media presence. Like she was in Waco for much of her career before she went to Baton Rouge, right? So she's not often had to be in the spotlight here. But, all that said, I'm open to the possibility that Angel Reese is actually at fault here. Right? And that maybe she needs time away from the team or the game to get her affairs in order. And I'm not the biggest Kim Mulkey fan, and we can get into that later, but she is the coach, and it's her prerogative to run the program as she sees fit within reason. And so, I'm willing to accept that maybe Angel Reese is not playing for totally legitimate reasons right now, but I do agree that maybe there's a way that Kim Mulkey could have handled this better, but given who she is, I don't think she's doing anything unusual, right? When you go to play for Kim Mulkey, if you're a player and you know her background and you know what she believes, how she treats media, how she's treated former players, all that other sort of stuff, you don't go there expecting that she's going to protect you in that way, right? Or that she's going to have some sort of knack for drawing attention away from you if you've done something wrong. So I just kind of think that this is what they all get. You know what I mean? And you'd like for Angel Reese to have a better curtain call for her last year in college basketball, but that just doesn't seem like what's going to happen.
She is a totally confounding character and a complicated character, and not just...
Wait, which one? Which one? Angel or Kim?
Kim, I'm talking about at the moment.
Okay.
And not in the... I don't even mean that in the way that, we talk about Bob Knight and say he's complicated because he literally choked a player. Oh, he's complicated because, he cares about academics. Oh, he choked a guy. Oh, he won a title. I think that there is some legitimate complexity here. And there's just so much in the anti-Kim Mulkey ledger that we could put. Her flippant attitude around COVID for years now, the way that she treated Brittany Griner's situation in Russia, somebody who really helped her in terms of her coaching career, getting to the elevated status that she is, and just in the most offhanded way possible, just like dismissing, the severity and the horror of what Brittany Griner was going through.
And before that, Josh not being supportive of Brittany Griner after she came out as gay and basically ostracized her from the Baylor program.
Yes, great point. Then on the other side, you have Alexis Morris, the point guard for LSU's national championship winning team last year. Kim Mulkey kicked her off the team at Baylor. Part of the narrative of the season last year was Alexis Morris coming back to LSU, saying, I need a Kim Mulkey in my life, and talking about how hitting that low point was the thing that she needed to make her a better person and a better player. And it was all kind of hugs and love. And then you had Angel Reese and Flajay Johnson, who's a star rapper, saying, Kim, let us be us. Angel Reese transferred from Maryland, saying, they wouldn't let me be me. Kim Mulkey let me be me. I love Kim Mulkey. Kim Mulkey is the greatest. And I think maybe in retrospect, the thing that's surprising is that last year went as smoothly as it did, with all the transfers, with all the notoriety, with all of the high pressure that came with that really big kind of Final Four run. So maybe the thing that's more to be expected is that you have all these players with huge personalities. You have a coach who's a taskmaster who has her own kind of issues. So the idea that there would be drama, and even, Joel, after anybody wins a national championship, it's kind of the story as old as time that it doesn't run as smoothly the next time through. And with this kind of cast of characters, maybe the bumpiness is going to be even more exacerbated.
Right. And I mean, the thing is it's really early in the season. It's very common, maybe less so in women's college basketball, but probably increasingly so as the talent, is more spread around, for a dominant team to lose early in the season. Like, they're just figuring it out. Like, maybe they don't come out with the appropriate level of intensity, maybe, off-season conditioning, whatever. Teams are learning each other, whatever. And they lost that opener to Colorado, who is also a ranked team. And it exposed some things that maybe none of them were quite prepared for. I mean, it was Kim Mulkey after that loss to Colorado. Like, she really went off on them. Mm-hmm. She went and said, and I'm looking this up, I'm disappointed and surprised in some individual players that I thought would be just tougher and have a little fight and leadership about them, right? Like, that's one loss. That's the first game of the season that she already kind of opened up on them. So it does kind of suggest that, like, you're right, that maybe last year went a little bit more smoothly, or it's possible that it was more chaotic and we just didn't know, and they managed to come together in time. And we'll never know, like, what it was like melding all those personalities together. But the one thing I would also say too about LSU is that, they are the defending champions, right? But they also caught a huge break last year. Like, they got to play Iowa in the national championship as opposed to South Carolina. And South Carolina had beat their ass earlier in the regular season. They beat them by like 24 points. And so if LSU had to play South Carolina in the opener, there's a chance we wouldn't even be caring about Angel Reese and any of this stuff right now, right? Like, there's, like, maybe they would kind of be flying under the radar and they would have a chance to kind of build up and we wouldn't be putting the spotlight on them. But, right now, they got lucky. They won the national championship.
They got lucky.
They got lucky.
Then he played South Carolina. I mean, I think...
There is an asterisk on the banner that they raised that says didn't play South Carolina. You're right about that.
Well, I mean, I think we all know, and we've had this fight on here before, college basketball crowns a champion. It doesn't crown the best team, okay? I mean, do you remember who won the men's basketball championship last year? UConn,
baby.
All right. Do you think UConn was the best team in college basketball last year?
Doesn't matter.
Not as good as Florida. Not as good as Florida Atlantic.
It does matter. Anyway, but you know what I'm saying. I just feel like we'll probably forget about this by January, don't you think? I mean, I don't know. Like, it'll be all behind us.
I don't know. These are some big personalities in a top program. A woman in Angel Reese who has a career in the WNBA. We don't know what's happened behind the scenes there.
We say that she has a career in the WNBA. We don't know. I mean, a lot of great players don't make that league, but you're right.
She has huge flaws in her game. She can't shoot. I think she is often a defensive liability. What she prides herself on is her kind of toughness down low, her rebounding ability, her ability on putbacks. And she has a kind of leadership quality that, has driven her team to success. But like they brought in Anissa Morrow from DePaul, a transfer who is one of the highest scoring players and biggest rebounders in the country. They brought in Haley Van Lith, who has a lot of followers on Instagram and is a great player too, from Louisville. They have one of the best freshmen to come in, I think, in years, and Michaela Williams. This is a team, the thing that could happen that I'm not saying will happen, but especially one of their bigs, Samaya Smith, just had what looked like a pretty severe knee injury. Like, what happens if they're good without her?
Yeah.
I agree with Joel. Like, I don't think she's a lock for WNBA stardom. And she's really capitalized on this amazing run that she had and they had. And so far, I mean, she's like retweeting LSU wins, like tweets. She's like only put out like pretty cryptic things on TikTok, but hasn't said anything to like, suggest that she's being wronged or that she's like going to transfer or anything like that. So this could still go in like a million different directions, but I think she's got a lot riding on this. And Kim Mulkey, I think, actually doesn't, because like, think of Nick Saban. There is nothing that plays better with a fan base than going after the media. Kim Mulkey is completely bulletproof in that state. We can shake our heads at it. Her stance on COVID, the majority of people in Louisiana would like vote for, elect her public health commissioner. I mean, there's not anything that she can do that's gonna make people think, that much less of her. Maybe nationally, but a lot of players have her back. The state has her back, and so it just really seems like Angel Reese, despite her fame, despite her success, despite her kind of becoming an icon, it just seems to me like she has kind of a lot riding on this, whatever this situation is.
Well, is this, if for Angel Reese, Joel, I mean, is it worse for her to come back on the team and not play? I mean, how does she benefit? How is Kim Mulkey helping her realize her dreams of playing professional basketball in the United States for the best league? She has a lot to think about here, clearly. And again, we don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but it does sure seem like Kim Mulkey is not doing anything to help Angel Reese right now, publicly.
That's probably fair. I guess what I would say to that, though, is that, and this is not going to be the most charitable thing you've ever heard me say on this podcast, but you know what you're going to get when you go play for Kim Mulkey. By this point, like, if you don't know, it's your fault, right? And I know that every kid thinks that, they're going to go someplace and they're going to thrive and they're not going to have the problems or whatever. So, yeah. So, I mean, you kind of get what you get when you sign up to play for Kim Mulkey, and this is the way she's going to handle it. And the one thing about it is that Kim Mulkey has made no bones about, loading up her roster. I mean, she brought in Angel Reese, and she'll bring in the next Angel Reese the year after that. And so they're all going to have to figure it out, being on this sort of all-star team that they've got now. And so, yeah, it's possible, and we don't know this, but I mean, there has been some hints on social media and otherwise that maybe Angel Reese has been surpassed on her own team. You know what I mean? Like, maybe there are a lot of good players there right now, and maybe she's having difficulty dealing with that. I don't know. I don't want to read too much into it, but I mean, I want Angel Reese to do fine. I want her to thrive. I want her to go to the WNBA and be the best player she can be. But like, when you go play down there for this woman, there's no guarantee that she's going to have your back if something goes poorly for you.
And I can't remember if it was mentioned, but there's another player, Kateri Poole, who's not been playing either, who is also on the national championship team. So whether those situations are related or not, we don't know. But again, it's like contextual. If Kateri Poole was more famous, then the whole conversation would be like, "Whoa, what did Kateri Poole do? She was such a great contributor to the team last year. She was, such a good leader." But it's all just focused on these two people because those are the ones that people know.
Josh and Joel, does it surprise you that there's been no reporting about what is going on? It's been 2 weeks now. This is kind of crazy that there's this complete informational vacuum and nobody's leaking. Nobody's talking.
College athletic programs have so much latitude and the ability to ice out reporters. Like, if they don't want there to be reporting, and often they don't, then they can do that. And I think that's just which is kind of interesting because I'm sure this will be an interesting exercise, but like Angel Reese has to be one of the biggest suspensions in college sports since I was trying to think, like, I don't know, like Jameis Winston had to miss a game in 2014, around his deal. So I'm sure maybe there's been some people since then, but this is a pretty big deal. But like, that's just what college sports is now. Like, trying to report on it is very difficult. You're just not going to get, unless Angel Reese was in trouble with the law in some sort of way, then it's unlikely that we're ever going to get the full story. But maybe we'll get it up through Twitter or the shade room or something. You know what I'm saying?
Well, think about Michigan and how and why that stuff came out. Like, we still don't know the full story of what happened there. And every Big Ten school was told about it. Like all of the like ADs and presidents of those schools know, people in the NCAA know, people within Michigan know, all the people that Connor Stallions paid know what's happening. And there was like one of those people did an anonymous story, and like compare that to what's happening at LSU. The only people who know are at LSU.
Right.
Like, there's no like vast network of people that could potentially leak. And so in some ways it's surprising. In some ways it's like, women's basketball reporting isn't as well-resourced as college football reporting. And so there are reporters who I'm sure are trying very hard to get this, but in terms of tonnage, there just aren't as many of them. And so in some ways, yeah, it is surprising. And I think the longer it goes, the more likelihood that we'll know eventually. But it just feels like a particular, sport and venue and circumstance that maybe is less prone to leaking than other things.
And I'll just say, kind of to close this out. So speaking of reporters, friend of the show, Chantel Jennings, did a profile on Angel Reese at the beginning of the year. It came out last month, October 31st. The only teammate that is quoted in there, past or present, is Kateri Poole. I'm not saying that
Kateri Poole is the reason that she transferred there. Like, she encouraged her to look at LSU.
There are a lot of other people on that team that could have been interviewed and had quotes there. And I do find that interesting. So just something to think about. In the next segment, Jonathan Clegg of the Wall Street Journal will talk to us about the Premier League's unprecedented punishment of Everton.
Hey listeners, the holiday season is upon us, and the Slate Shop is the perfect place to take the guesswork out of your gift list. Browse our selection of hand-poured candles, classy cocktail kits, stunning stationery, expertly crafted pasta makers, and everything in between. We even have official merch for the Slate fans in your life. Get your gift sets, stocking stuffers, white elephant gifts, and a treat for yourself while you're at it by going to slate.com/shop. That's slate.com/shop. Happy shopping. If you like using debit over credit, Discover Cashback Debit is definitely a game changer. It's a checking account that rewards everyone with cash back on everyday purchases, which means you can get cash back on tickets for the game, snacks, team merch, all with no fees, making this season a total win. Check out eligibility and terms at discover.com/cashbackdebit. Discover Bank, member FDIC.
Fans of the Liverpool-based English Premier League club Everton marched to the team's home match against Manchester United on Saturday. Here's what it sounded like. Yeah, I can't really tell what they're saying either. Maybe a listener can translate, but pretty sure I heard some fawks and fuckings in there. Inside the stadium, supporters booed the Premier League's pre-match anthem, raised a banner reading Premier League, hang your heads in shame, and waved pink placards bearing the word corrupt. The protests followed the league's decision this month to dock Everton 10 points in the standings for breaking financial rules, the stiffest penalty of its kind in the league's 31-year history. Joining us now, it's Jonathan Clegg. He is, as of today, the sports editor of the Wall Street Journal. Congratulations. And the co-author with Joshua Robinson of The Club, How the English Premier League Became the Wildest, Richest, Most Disruptive Force in Sports. Clegg and Robinson, who was on the show last week, also have a new book coming soon, The Formula, How Rogues, Geniuses, and Speed Freaks Re-Engineered F1 into the World's Fastest Growing Sport. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
The protests, John, didn't do much to help Everton on the field. They were trounced 3-0, and everybody should go watch Manchester United's 19-year-old Alejandro Garnacho's absolutely insane bicycle kick goal in that game. But fans raised more than £40,000 in a week to make those pink placards and also to hire a plane to fly over Etihad Stadium in Manchester during a primetime match on Sunday between Man City and Liverpool, trailing a banner reading Premier League equals corrupt. John, what exactly was Everton punished for, and why are fans so pissed?
So Everton was punished for breaking the Premier League's financial sustainability rules. If it comes as a surprise to learn that the Premier League has financial sustainability rules, that is because for pretty much the entire history of the Premier League, teams have been allowed to spend as much as they like, often running, very close to bankruptcy, sometimes running into bankruptcy with no punishment, with no oversight. The Premier League has long been a sort of financial Wild West. Now, Everton, of all teams, have become the first team to fall foul of these sustainability rules when it turned out that they spent roughly £20 million more than they were supposed to over a 3-year period, which incorporated the COVID lockdown. What makes Everton fans so mad about this is the fact that the 10-point penalty that they've been hit with, as you mentioned, the harshest penalty in Premier League history, comes, against a backdrop of teams getting away with all sorts of nefarious things and escaping unpunished. There have been teams that have been found guilty of fielding ineligible players and escaping relegation that way. Teams that have been found guilty of tapping up 14-year-olds and getting them to sign for their team rather than a rival. There have been teams who have been bought by owners who have come from horrendous regimes, being guilty of human rights violations. All of that has been waved through by the Premier League, but apparently Everton's overspending is a cause for a 10-point deduction.
John, the thing that this reminds me of is a quote that I'm sure Joel is familiar with from the legendary UNLV basketball coach Jerry Tarkanian, which is, the NCAA is so mad at Kentucky, they're going to give Cleveland State another year of probation. The idea being that in American college sports, the big teams get to skate while the little guys get punished. And it happens year after year, decade after decade. This seems to be what Everton fans believe is happening, that their, mid-table club, not known as being particularly profligate in spending, is getting an unprecedented punishment for something that, even by the admission of this commission, was not intentional. It's not like they broke the rules on purpose, were hiding anything, were intentionally cheating. They just kind of made a mistake. While for years there's been talk of, we've got to do something about Man City, we've got to do something about Chelsea, and nothing is happening. Is that a kind of fair, in your more dispassionate, non-fan-addled view, is that a fair description of what's happening here?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that, yes, Everton didn't sort of willfully cheat. Now, that they were certainly guilty of irresponsible spending. And I think, there are reports that they budgeted for the team to finish 6th when they finished 16th. And anyone who looked at Everton's squad and thought that they were going to finish 6th probably does deserve some sort of punishment. But
you'd think that unprecedented punishment equals cheating or equals like hiding things, willful abuse. Exactly. And just like thinking you're going to do well and not doing well is like that seems like a different category of error.
Absolutely. And to be clear, Everton was found guilty of one breach of these sustainability rules, whereas Manchester City is accused of 115 breaches, which it systematically covered up and obscured from the regulators in a sort of very deliberate attempt to cheat the rules. That case, is still pending, but City was hit with by UEFA with a 2-year transfer ban for breaking its financial financial rules, which it then, got out of on appeal. And I think, if you look back at that, Manchester City's run-in with UEFA, in the leaked emails about their defense of that, it came out that City's plan to avoid punishment was just to drown the football authorities in lawyers and paperwork. This was a deliberate attempt to sort of obfuscate the investigation. Everton was sort of caught with a simple case of overspending, and whereas Manchester City got away scot-free, Everton has been hit with this very draconian punishment.
Jonathan, can you just help me out here? Because is it fair to say that this punishment by the Premier League is obviously a means to enforce fiscal responsibility on teams, but like as an American sports fan, isn't irresponsible spending what most fans want for their team? Like, at least, like, trying, right? Like, because that's the big problem here in basketball, in the NBA and in the Major League Baseball in particular, that teams don't even try. Like, they just have, they have this salary floor and they just let their teams, deteriorate until they can somehow win through the draft or whatever. But it just seems kind of crazy to me that a team gets punished for actually for spending a lot of money. Is that the right way to look at it or the wrong way to look at it?
No, I think that's right. I think there are some aspects of English soccer that sort of work to prevent teams from sort of, not trying to win. The fact that the worst teams get relegated at the end of every season sort of compels you to do the best that you can to be successful on the field. But yeah, overspending has not only been a fact of life of the Premier League for its entire duration, it's pretty much a selling point of the league. Premier League clubs, willingly outspend every other, domestic league in Europe. They pay the highest transfer fees. They pay the biggest salaries. They lure the biggest stars. That has been the key to the Premier League's success. The reason that the Premier League is the most successful league in the world is because so many of its clubs have spent irresponsibly, and that sort of inflationary pressure on Premier League transfer fees and wages has brought so many of the world's best players to England. So it feels a lot like the Premier League is sort of selectively applying this sort of criteria now after years of sort of benefiting from its teams overspending. It feels like it's sort of suddenly decided now, perhaps in the aftermath of COVID, when, many clubs did lose money, that they are now much more interested in operating sustainably, when in years past, this sort of punishment would never have been handed down. And
the argument here is that if a club has the revenue to spend, like Chelsea and Man City and Man U and other top-tier teams do, then that's fine. That helps the Premier League. It drives up salaries. It drives up interest. It brings more talent to the league. But if a middling team or a lower tier team spends a lot of money, it just generates losses. And that drives up costs for everybody else in the league because it artificially inflates wages, which is not good for everybody. It presents a risk that if a team loses too much and they go bust, that's going to have fiscal repercussions throughout the league. But this is such a slight amount of money, too. We're talking like $8 million over their limit. And the risk for Everton, which we have not discussed here, and I think this is what I'd like you to talk about a little now, is that, look, they dropped from 14th place in the 20-team league to 19th place and in the relegation zone. And if Everton get relegated, that's a loss of tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue for the club. They have never been out of the top flight of English football, at least in the last 70 years. And I think the threat of relegation is now a very real one. I think perhaps Everton will be saved by the fact that the Premier League, the bottom teams of the Premier League this year seem abnormally weak relative to other years. But the likelihood of Everton finishing 10 points ahead of the relegation zone, 10 points clear of the relegation zone, I'm not sure. It certainly raises that. I think it also raises important questions about the teams that got relegated from the Premier League last year, Leicester, Southampton. They were the ones, they were the ones who actually were sort of, punished by Everton overspending. Everton stayed up at their expense last year. They ended up getting relegated. And yet it's only now that the Premier League is applying the penalty.
If you're not going to punish Everton during the actual time period when this was going on, then why not wait until you can punish all of these clubs, Man City, Chelsea, and Everton, at the same time. That way, just from a public relations standpoint and from a fairness standpoint, you don't get people to say, oh, you're just going after the minnow, the big guys always get to skate. It's not like they were moving with extraordinary vigor, even against Everton. Like, if they're talking about that this was happening over a 3-year period, it just seems stupid, both from a fairness standpoint and from a, staving off protest standpoint.
That's right. And I think it also, it almost, came out of the blue as well. Like I feel like the Manchester City, case has been rumbling on for so many years and is sort of part of the, wider, discussion about, Manchester City in the Premier League. Whereas Everton's, minor overspending was not something that fans of rival teams were sort of unduly worked up about. I don't think many fans of other clubs even knew that Everton had sort of breached the sustainability rules. I mean, to be honest, I don't think many fans know there are sustainability rules in the first place. So the fact that Everton breached them was not something that was sort of front of mind, in the sort of English soccer discussion. Yeah, I think the Premier League, raised some major issues for itself with how it's handled these. And especially, when it comes to, like I say, the sort of discrepancy between Everton being accused of a single, charge versus Manchester City's 115. I mean, what the sort of magnitude of punishment that City, should be given based on a 10-point deduction for one breach.
A 1,150 point deduction. It's just math.
Exactly. What exactly? What are we doing here?
Everton fans are pissed. This is an unprecedented punishment. What recourse does Everton actually have here? Like, what can be done in the face of this unprecedented punishment?
So, Everton can appeal the judgment all the way up to the European Court of Arbitration for Sport, which is how Manchester City got out of its 2-year transfer ban that was handed down by UEFA. Short of that, there's not much that Everton can do, because let's remember, when we say that the Premier League has handed down this punishment, we're really talking about the 19 other clubs that make up the Premier League. The Premier League does not have a sort of all-powerful commissioner like Roger Goodell or Adam Silver. This punishment has come, via the 19 other clubs who, as you mentioned, are motivated by things like not wanting Everton to overspend so that they don't have to end up paying more to compete, to keep pace with how their rivals are spending.
But aren't those other clubs worried about a circular firing squad thing happening? Like, if this can happen to Everton, why won't it just happen to every other team next?
Because I think it's the Cleveland State argument, Josh, that do you really want to regulate Manchester City? Is that in the best interests of the league? Everton is a smaller fish. Sure, historical club has always been in the top tier in England, but when you're deciding who to execute, you're going to execute Everton long before you're going to execute Man City or Chelsea, who are worldwide brands.
Even the mid-table clubs or the lower tier clubs would have that point of view, John?
I think what you're saying is correct, but it sort of implies a level of kind of rationality and collaborative thinking that English Premier League clubs have never been. You could never be accused of following. Generally that they sort of lurch from one sort of crisis to the next, and anything that they can do to sort of safeguard their own position at the expense of any of their rivals is usually the first sort of course of action. So yes, you're quite right, but that is not typically how English football clubs operate.
So what could happen here?
Well, I think the likelihood is that Everton will appeal this verdict, and knowing how the sort of very slow pace at which these things get heard, it would not surprise me at all if the verdict isn't delivered until the outcome of this season's Premier League is decided. And it would not surprise me at all that if Everton survive by more than 10 points, the initial punishment is maintained, or if it turns out that they can lower it to 8 points, and that will ensure. I would be very surprised if it turns out that the 10-point deduction that was handed down last week ends up being the reason that Everton is relegated.
But if they would have gotten relegated under a 10-point penalty, and then they lower the penalty, and some other team gets relegated, then that team's going to file an appeal. It's going to be a shit show.
Invariably, it will be a shit show. That is just the way that English football operates. But that's why I'm sure that the appeal will be heard after the season, so that they know for sure what impact their final decision will have.
Okay, that's well and good. They're going to bury them in procedural bullshit, which is to be expected. But what does the Premier League do about Man City? I mean, 10-point deduction, 50-point deduction, relegation. I mean, how do you actually address this? Or do they do what you were suggesting the league might do with Everton, which is to wait till the end of the season and calculate just how many points we can deduct them without forcing them to be relegated?
Yeah, I'm almost certain that will be the end result, because as much as I say that English football is not famous for forward thinking and sort of a rational approach to these sorts of decisions, I do think that even the 19 other teams that make up the Premier League recognize that relegating Manchester City is probably not in the best interests of themselves or English football or the Premier League as a product, which is how they like to think of it now. So I'm sure that, again, there will be some useful delays, some more stalling, and eventually, once the outcome of this season's title race is known, the requisite punishment will be handed down. And I highly, highly doubt that it will result in Manchester City being booted out of the league.
Jonathan Clegg is the sports editor of the Wall Street Journal. He's also the co-author with Joshua Robinson of a book about the Premier League, The Club. They've got a new book coming out about Formula One called The Formula. John, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thanks so much.
At the grocery store, you can get pecans, but don't you want bourbon pecans, sweet and spicy pecans, pecan brittle, or butter toffee pecans? If you're eager to try them, head to nuts.com to see the hundreds of different varieties of nuts they offer. I can attest, personally, that those bourbon pecans are extremely snackable, so is the organic dried mango. If you get that stuff, you won't be disappointed, and their wide selection means there's something for everyone. At nuts.com, quality is a top priority. They roast their nuts and pop their corn the same day it ships, so they reach you deliciously fresh. Satisfaction is guaranteed. Shop a la carte at any time, or opt into hassle-free auto delivery so you never run out of your favorite items. If you're already stocked up at home, they also sell directly to businesses. Right now, Nuts.com is offering new customers a free gift with purchase and free shipping on orders of $29 or more at Nuts.com/hangup. So go check out all of the delicious options at nuts.com/hangup. You'll receive a free gift and free shipping when you spend $29 or more. That's nuts.com/hangup.
And now it is time for Afterballs, sponsored by Bennett's Prune Juice, endorsed by Kenny Sailors, who says it was okay. We just finished talking about Everton. The club was a founding member of the Football League in 1888 and has competed in the top flight of English soccer for 121 out of 125 seasons. Its nickname is the Toffees, possibly after a candy store, according to Wikipedia, named Mother Noblets, or after Ye Ancient Everton Toffee House, operated by Ma Bushnell. The website fanchants.com lists 157 different songs sung by Everton fans. I don't know, you have to learn them all, but maybe just one or two. So let's start with one or two. It's a grand old team. Hail, hail, the Everton are here. What the hell do we care? What the hell do we care? Hail, hail, the Everton are here. What the hell do we care now? For it's a grand old team to play for. For it's a grand old team to play for. We don't care what the red shites say. That would be Liverpool. What the fuck do we care? For all we know that there's going to be a show when the Everton boys are there. Banks of the Royal Blue Mersey. Oh, we hate Shankly and we hate St. John, but most of all, we hate Big Ron, and we'll hang the Copites one by one on the banks of the Royal Blue Mersey. Copites, also fans of Liverpool. So to hell with Liverpool and Rangers too. We'll throw them all in the Mersey and we'll fight with all our might for the lads in the Royal Blue Jersey. Joel, what's your Banks of the Royal Blue Mersey?
So almost 10 years to the day later, I'm finally ready to apologize for myself and on behalf of my former editor, Ben Mathis-Lilly, and the defunct BuzzFeed sports vertical. So let me explain. In the fall of 2013, I was working as a senior sports writer at BuzzFeed in New York when I submitted a list of story ideas to BML. Somewhere near the bottom was one about the season-ending showdown between New Mexico State and Idaho. And at the time, I could look that far ahead into the future and figure out that neither one of those programs were going to have much to play for by the end of the season. Both teams had gone 1-11 in 2012 and would be playing as one of only 6 independent programs in the NCAA football bowl subdivision after their old league, the WAC, fell apart. So basically, New Mexico State and Idaho would be playing on November 30th, 2013 for Pride. And that's about it. There was no conference title, no bowl game, not even a little made-up trophy at stake here. And in retrospect, I should admit that I actually only pitched this idea so I could go to New Mexico to cover a game. I'd never been to New Mexico, just kind of wanted to see it. Hey, BuzzFeed was rolling in venture capital dough at the time, so hey, whatever. But BML and BuzzFeed was smart enough to suggest that I just cover the game from home, which fine. I had recently learned to make GIFs on my computer and I could post videos in my posts, so I figured I could make something of it. So if you want to know why Viral News Shop didn't make it, it's probably because people like me were dedicating my efforts to post about a pair of 1-10 teams during a week when there were games between Auburn and Alabama, which became Kick Six, or the Michigan and Ohio State game, or the Florida State and Florida game. Anyway, we ended up running this post on December 6th, 2013, with the following headline: The least important football game ever. The subhead: Did you hear about what happened when Idaho played at New Mexico State last Saturday? Of course you didn't. Look, this is not my most compassionate piece of journalism, and here's a couple of lines from it. Their season finale on Saturday was, in some ways, a Bizarro-style Iron Bowl. This game would involve none of the following: a rivalry, good football, media attention, fan interest, or a trophy. Are you ready for some football? If so, why? Anyway, New Mexico State went on to win that game 24-16 to close out its season at 2-10. Afterward, then head coach Doug Martin told the Las Cruces Sun-News it was huge to finally win one. That's a footprint that our seniors put down that our young guys can carry into the Sun Belt next year. And yeah, New Mexico State and Idaho were set to join a newly reconstituted Sun Belt conference starting in the 2014 season. Me, not being a nice guy, wrote, "This despite the fact that nothing in recent history of either program suggests anything other than a future of more bad football. But at least they'll have each other." So, what happened in the past decade? I'll tell you. It seemed like things were going to get worse for both of those programs. 3 years later, the Sun Belt dropped Idaho and New Mexico State. In a statement, the league said it wanted a more regionally contiguous conference and that those schools no longer fit their geographic footprint. So, once again, Idaho and New Mexico State were kicked to the curb without another conference to go to. And in some ways, they faced the existential crisis facing Oregon State and Washington State to go. There was seemingly nowhere else for them to go. So what did Idaho do? It dropped back to the football championship subdivision, which old heads still might call Division I AA. The Vandals joined the Big Sky Conference, a return to their old roots before their failed attempt at competing in the FBS. So this is the league with Montana, Montana State, Northern Arizona, and Sacramento State, among other programs. Idaho had played in the Big Sky from 1965 to 1995, and they'd won 9 league championships. And while it's been a slow climb back to being a competitive program, Idaho today is now one of the best programs in the Big Sky and FCS. In fact, The Vandals went 8-3 this year, finished number 2 in the league behind Montana, and will host a playoff game Saturday against Southern Illinois. And what's happened at New Mexico State since then might even be more impressive. Now, I won't pretend the Aggies didn't stink a little longer after being booted from the Sun Belt. They played as an independent, basically against their will, for another 4 seasons and went 8-30 before Jerry Kill arrived as the head coach at the end of the 2021 season. Kill had had a lot of success as a head coach prior to showing up in Las Cruces. He coached winners at Southern Illinois and Northern Illinois before landing a job at Minnesota, where he led the Gophers to a pair of 8-5 seasons before health problems forced him to resign in 2015. Kill worked as a special assistant for the next few years at Southern Illinois again, Virginia Tech, and even TCU before New Mexico State hired him as a head coach. In 2022, Kill's first season there and New Mexico State's last as an independent, the Aggies won their second bowl game since 1960 and finished 7-6. Following a victory in the Quick Lane Bowl, Kill even lived up to a promise he didn't think he'd have to keep.
Kill walked into Tat Reapers on Sunday ready to get a tattoo dedicated to last season's bowl-winning team. The reason why he was getting tatted? A little proposition he made with the team leading up to the bowl game.
They were kind of dragging just a little bit, and I said, okay. I called them all up and said, here's the deal. I said, you win this bowl game. I said, I respect this team so much and what you've done. I'll get a tattoo on my arm. And they all just went crazy. Diego getting 2 first downs at the end of the game. I said, as soon as the game was over, everybody else jumping around. I said, oh boy, gonna get that tattoo now.
Check out the video. It's a pretty cool tattoo. And I don't know what Kill has planned for this year, but he might have to go even bigger. Maybe he might shave off that beard or put something across his chest. Who knows? But New Mexico State joined the new Conference USA this fall, its first league affiliation since being kicked out of the Sun Belt. And in their first year, Kill and the Aggies went 10-3 and will play for the league championship on Friday against Liberty. Now, when I say New Mexico State went 10-3, I don't think you understand what this means. The Aggies haven't won 10 or more games in a season in 63 years. And as we mentioned earlier in the show, they beat Auburn 31-10 for the program's first ever win over an SEC program. In that game, the Aggies outgained Auburn 414 to 213 yards and held onto the ball for nearly 39 minutes. That came against the same Auburn team that lost on a miracle last play to the SEC West champ Alabama on Saturday, okay? And consider that in 1992, Sports Illustrated tabbed New Mexico State as the nation's worst college football program, saying, over the years, New Mexico State fans have learned to follow football the way physicists once watched the first A-bomb test in nearby Alamogordo from a safe distance. Not anymore. Both the fans at New Mexico State and Idaho have something to celebrate now, something to play for. And they really made that senior sports writer Joel Anderson look pretty dumb. In fact, you could say they got the last word. The Aggies and Vandals are thriving, which is not what's happening with BuzzFeed right now. So, once again, apologies on behalf of me, Ben Mathis-Lilly, and BuzzFeed Sports.
When you said both the fans at New Mexico State and Idaho, I thought you were referring
just
to
two fans. Yeah,
two fans.
I think it's just 2 guys actually. So yeah, but I apologize to both.
Did you clear with Ben Mathis-Lilly that you could apologize for him?
I didn't run this by him, so he was going to find out on the fly. But I assume he's going to agree. I mean, it was a bad idea in retrospect, don't you think?
Great gifts, though. Great gifts.
Yeah, well, hey, man, look, I mean, that was a talent. I mean, I learned how to make gifts. I mean, I spent all this time. It's probably the most impressive thing I've learned to do in the last decade or so, like learn how to make a GIF. Unfortunately, I don't have anywhere to try that out anymore, guys. So
that is our show for today. Our producer is Kevin Bendis. To listen to past shows and subscribe or just reach out, go to slate.com/hangup, and you can email us at hangup@slate.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. For Joel Anderson, the gift maker, and Stefan Fatsis, I'm Josh Levin. Remember Zelmo Beatty, and thanks for listening.
This holiday, instead of giving them something nice, why not gift them somewhere nice? During the IHG Hotels and Resorts Cyber Sale, you can do just that and save. Shopping is easy in the IHG One Rewards app, where you'll save 20% on travel across 6,000 plus global destinations. And if you want to gift yourself somewhere nice, go ahead. You'll earn more and save more during the cyber sale. Check out all the deals at ihg.com/cyber sale. Terms apply.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Heidecker. You know me, Tim and Eric, Bridesmaids, and Fantastic Four. I'd like to personally invite you to listen to Office Hours Live with me and my co-hosts, DJ Doug Pound.
Hello.
And Vic Berger.
Howdy.
Every week we bring you laughs, fun, games, and lots of other surprises. It's live. We take your Zoom calls.
Music.
We love having fun. Excuse me?
Songs. Vic said something.
Music.
Songs. Music.
I like having fun. I like to laugh. I like to meet people who can make me laugh. Please subscribe now.